Hi there, and welcome to the Grief and Rebirth podcast. I'm your host, author and trauma survivor Irene Weinberg, here to encourage you wherever you are in your healing journey. In each episode, I chat with incredible grief and trauma specialists, healers, mediums, and celebs, as well as remarkable people who have inspiring healing stories to share. If you're looking for a podcast that's both uplifting and inspiring, you've found it. Let us help you find your joy in life.
Hi, everyone. I hope this finds each of you so very well. I'm speaking to you from my studio in West Orange, New Jersey, and I could not be more delighted to have the pleasure of interviewing Silvia Rossi, who is a modern-day psychic medium with a loyal and ever-growing clientele and following, both in the United States and internationally. Silvia was born gifted. She experienced spirit communications as a toddler, and as a young teen, her gift filled her days with images and information about people she would come into contact with. Afraid and unsure of what all of this meant, she tried to ignore and even suppress the experiences until she was in her mid-20s when she met a medium who became her mentor and guide within the spiritual world. It was then that Silvia began to understand that this life is only one phase of the eternal journey of the soul, and she became passionate about helping individuals and families understand their eternal connection to loved ones who have passed on. A resident of New Jersey, Silvia maintains a working relationship with several psychologists in the tri-state area who refer her mediumship services to their patients to assist in the grieving process. She was honored to work alongside the families and support groups of victims of the 9/11 tragedy, and she has also worked with the police, helping them solve cold cases and murder cases. Over the past 26 years, Silvia has hosted her own radio show, appeared on the Sally Jessy Rafael Show, and has been a guest and co-host on the radio podcast show Creative Mojo. Her remarkable gifts also extend beyond the spiritual arena. As one of Silvia's lifelong passions is singing and playing guitar with New Jersey's own midlife crisis band, I can personally attest to Silvia's awesome musical gifts because I recently had a beyond fabulous time dancing while Silvia sang and played her guitar with her band at a local club. I look forward to talking with Silvia about her early years seeing spirit, the things she somehow knew about people as a teenager, her working relationship with psychologists, her work with the police helping them solve cold cases and murder cases, 9/11, how we on this planet are evolving from 3D to 5D, and so much more for what is surely going to be an incredibly interesting and very enlightening interview for all of us. And full disclosure, I have experienced several of my own eye-opening sessions with Silvia. In one of them, she knew nothing about a situation I was struggling with, was beyond accurate about it, and she channeled fantastic advice to me about steps to take to resolve it. And Silvia has also brought me very accurate, heartwarming messages with healing insights from my deceased loved ones. I can say from my heart that she's a true treasure. Hey, my friend Silvia, a heartfelt welcome to Grief and Rebirth podcast.
Irene, what can I tell you? I am like just verklempt is the word. I cannot even begin. I'm almost in tears. I'm so happy I'm here and so humbled. And I feel very honored to be with you. I think that our meeting is a very spiritual one, and how we met, why we met, and the forging of our relationship and friendship and everything has meant the world to me. It's been very special to me. You are just a very special person in my life. And even though we're both very busy people, as you and I can attest to that, I still talk about you. I think about you. I credit you with so many things. I see so many parallels in our own lives and our own experiences. You doing your work, me doing mine. And I really feel very fortunate and blessed to have you as part of my, I don't know, spiritual circle
We're
of,
kind of a family.
friends and family that
Yeah.
that I really treasure. And you know, I really am just so blessed. I feel so blessed and humbled and emotional about it.
Thank
That
you.
was
Now
the
you're
most
making me
beautiful
reflect.
introduction I've ever had. But thank you, and thank you for having me on your show.
My pleasure. So now that I've told them how fabulous you are, let's get them to know you in a lot of different ways. So my
Sure.
first question, let's describe, because this knocked me out when I first met you and you told me about this. Please describe how close to death you were as an infant and explain your knowing that you are what is called a soul walk-in. And I'm
Oh
sure
my God.
many of the people listening to us do not know what a soul walk-in is.
Okay, so let me first describe what a soul walk-in is. I was clueless as to what this term meant until I got one of my first readings in when I was about in my mid-20s, maybe 24, 25 years old. And I had a psychic artist who was drawing and painting my past lives look at me and just stop and said, you know, you're a walk-in. And I had no clue what that was. She says, well, the soul in your mother's womb was going to exit because that fetus was going to pass on. And your soul decided to get quote unquote clearance to come in and inhabit the body to be able to accomplish whatever mission that you're meant to accomplish in this lifetime. Now, I've looked further into what a soul walk-in is, and the walk-ins could happen when there's a traumatic event, when there is a near-death experience, and the actual soul crosses and another soul comes in, and that could be at an adult age, and that is what sometimes accounts for total amnesia, the complete erasing of someone's memory, someone's past, and someone new with a different character shows up in life in that same body, and you know, is the family and associates and friends are dumbfounded by the change in character. Along with that comes a change in tastes, in appearance, in what they wear. Everything about them changes, and it's not explainable. I mean, you can say it was because of the trauma, but from what this woman explained to me and what I've read on the subject matter, it is that soul's journey ended previously, and a new soul came in to complete some work that they need to do. And it's an efficient way to do it because the person does not need to be quote unquote born again. You know, the soul does not need to habit a new body. It could actually use the existing body and continue the existing body's journey into the other side, so to speak.
But you
So
are an
it's an
infant, so
efficient way. You can even it could even be like recycling, you know, because there's no need to reproduce another body. But in my case, I was born, my mother had a toxic pregnancy, which means basically she could not keep down any nutrients because she was sick, throwing up all the time. And she lost about 20, from what I understand, like 24 pounds, 23 pounds. while she was pregnant with me. She lost weight, and she was just a toothpick with an olive through it. And God bless her. She told me stories that she would go to work and on a public bus with an IV, and use the time on the bus to like have the IV in her before she got to work. And then she was okay, good to go, because otherwise she wasn't really thriving at all. So because of this condition, I was born with a gaping hole in the middle of my abdomen. My intestines were exposed. They're not sure of whether I had transverse organs, which means some of my vital organs, my liver, my pancreas. I don't think you know this. My pancreas and my gallbladder are on the opposite side of my body, but I'm not sure if that's a consequence of them shoving everything back in. I'm not sure, or was I born that way? That's so. That is what I was told in my 20s, but I already knew the story because my mother in the hospital, unbeknownst to her, because I was medevaced to a different hospital. I was born in a small hospital called Doctors Hospital in Coral Gables, Florida, and near the university that I would attend later on in college after high school. And I was medevaced to Jackson Memorial, which is now the teaching hospital for that same university. And my life was saved by Dr. Gil Bear, and he performed life-saving surgery, which turned out to be pioneering in that time. But about 70% of my intestines, my small intestines, were cut for fear of being exposed to the air and bacterial infection.
Wow.
Reconnected and shoved back in, and pretty much hope for the best. They gave my parents a 50-50 chance of survival. And if I did survive, that I would most likely be developmentally disabled because they didn't know I was a preemie. On top of that, I was, after surgery, before surgery, I was 4.5 pounds. After surgery, I was 2.25.
Wow.
So I was very tiny. And they said she probably is going to have developmental disabilities. And she most likely will not be able to eat solid foods. We don't know. So I was, either going to be on a feeding tube or whatever. None of that happened. My mother, now let me digress. My mother was in the hospital, still crying, still unawares as to what my condition was. Where was I? Nobody was informing her on that I had been medevaced and operated on. And she was crying a river in the hospital room. A woman, a nurse, tall, blonde, dressed, she describes her dress as a little antiquated for the time. She had a long white gown, a very small hat, and what you would call like that, like a shawl, like the old shawls that the nurses used to wear. But she walked in and she sat with my mother, and she was very encouraging, and she was very uplifting to her. She prayed with my mom, and she told my mother to have faith, and to have faith that God was taking care of her baby and that her baby would be fine. And she prayed with her. And then before she left, in this non-religious hospital, this was a town hospital, Coral Gables.
I grew up in Coral Gables, which we've talked about. So I know.
And there you go. There's the more connections that we have, right?
Yes.
And so apparently she takes out a rosary. Now, my mom is Catholic, raised Catholic. I was raised Catholic, all that, and gives it to my mom. My mom takes down her name and off she went. So my mom was in the hospital for a few days because she did have a kidney infection that was the cause of the early term labor. And then she was released 5 days later, and she went to the nurse's station with her rosary in tow, and said, "This is so and so's, nurse so and so's rosary. I have it for her. Tell her thank you." And the woman said, "We have no nurse by that name."
You had an angelic
And that
visitation.
was just really odd. And subsequently, my mom would have readings that would reveal to her that there was an angel. I was meant to come into this world. It was God's hand. These were things that were told to my mother, God's hand, that I was here. Now, people in my family members treated me, I was a miracle child by any definition. And then in my 20s, I did have that one session with that psychic artist who said I was a walk-in. And she said there was an angel that came to help you and to help your family deal with how you came into this world. No one, Irene, no one would know this unless I would disclose it to you, because I look normal. And I have no digestive problems. I have no developmental problems.
Amazing.
Some people may argue that I do, but I have no developmental problems to speak of. And, you
You're a
know,
walking, talking miracle.
I live a normal
miracle.
life. Yes, more than a normal life. I live a great life.
That's amazing. So I want to ask you also, that's such a great, amazing story. You saw spirit. So now you have this experience, and now you come in, you're tuned in. So you, from an early age, you saw spirit, and as a teen, you knew things about people. So you want to describe a couple of those experiences with us?
So a couple. So in a crib, I would experience, and this I blocked out for some time until I really remembered it. And it was corroborated by my mother and my sister's godmother, who was was married to my dad's first cousin. So they all remember me screaming every single night. And there were periods of time where I would go and sleep in my parents' bedroom with my parents, and then back again, be put in the crib, and I could never sleep. But I remember seeing people as see-through figures in gray. It was nighttime, so that's how I saw them. But it wasn't that frightened me so much. It was their voices, because their voices made it real. I could not tune out their voice. I can close my eyes and not see them, but the hearing the voices, I could hear them. I could hear their chatter. I could hear them trying to contact me. And that, I think, was what, and still to this day, Irene, I have a thing about them contacting me audibly. I cannot stand it. It brings back certain memories. Even right now, I have a bad sensation in my ears about it, but it gets me a little antsy because I think it was just so traumatizing for me as an infant.
So later on during our interview, I'm going to ask you how you get your messages. So you don't get them by hearing. You get them.
I do, but it's when they do it at night and I'm asleep. And that's happened to me where I've been woken up and I have forbidden them completely from contacting me that way. First off, I'm not working. Leave me alone. I have to sleep. I don't go and disturb them on their off time. So I ask them not to disturb me on that time either. I think that's rude.
And they're respecting you for that?
Yes, they did, because I threatened not to continue my work as a psychic medium.
Wow. And so now I want to ask you also, as a kid, you would walk into a room and you knew things about people. So yeah, you're like the person who reads, you really read a room.
Yeah, yes. And it became a problem because you listen, as a teenager, you wanted to fit in. You wanted to be with the popular kids. I started playing guitar around that time, so I became somewhat popular, but I was a very smart kid. I was on the honor roll. I did well in school. So I kind of fit in with everybody, but I knew I was different. I knew I couldn't talk about certain things. So to have these awarenesses as a teenager and feel the whole teenage awkwardness about being a teenager, the hormones, the everything, the wanting to be liked, the wanting to have a boyfriend, the wanting to be pretty, the everything, and then have this on top of it, disaster. I'm telling you, it was a disaster because it would confuse me. It would make me feel emotional. I would get certain, when people tell you something and they're not telling you the truth.
You could really literally see through someone if they were presenting something to you. Really, wow.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, with all of this going on, what did you end up majoring in? I know you went to the University of Miami like I did. So you got all these choices. You're a musician.
College.
You're smart. You're doing all this stuff. Before you decided to do what you're doing, what did you go for as in school? And then the other question I wanted to ask you is, do you think some of your musical abilities have contributed to making you even more sensitive just receiving messages?
Yes. Yes, because it engages that same part of the brain, first off, but funny, let's go back to college, and I wanted to be in music, and I wanted to go to the music school, and my mom dissuaded me.
Tell me, did you want to go to the University of Miami for music?
I ended up at the University of Miami.
My major was music from the University of Miami.
Stop it, Irene.
With a minor.
I didn't even know that. So anyway, my mom dissuaded me. Oh, I needed to pick something that was practical, that I could make money on, and so I picked psychology because I already had a head start as I saw it. And I did end up getting my undergrad degree there with a specialization in developmental psychology and counseling. And then I moved to New Jersey and continued my master's education at William Patterson College. And
I lived right near William Patterson College too.
I can't with you. So anyway, so then that's how that came to be. And I was working with the developmental disabilities organization in North Bergen, but it was a non-for-profit agency, and it still exists in the state, Developmental Disabilities of New Jersey. And from there, I was studying part-time, finishing up my master's program. And that's when everything changed. I started meditating. I started, participating in a meditation group on Monday nights religiously, because I found that it calmed me down. It made me study better. It just brought a lot of peace to my life. And little did I know it would open up that Pandora's box that I had of the gift that I've always had, that I suppressed, wanting to be normal, quote unquote. And it just unleashed itself at that time.
Now, through this meditation group, is that where you met the medium who became your mentor and guide?
That it wasn't the meditation group, but that it was through the other organizations that I became involved with that I met the medium. I met the medium by chance because of, you get into this group, and then they're going to have a psychic fair here, and and you get on their newsletter, and their newsletter has all these advertisements for different programs and advertisement for different things happening in the state. So I just had perchance go to a holistic fair that they had somewhere at a Unitarian church on Forest Avenue. I want to say in Tenafly,
I was
somewhere
going to tell
around
you, I think it's in Paramus.
in Paramus.
I've
Yes.
been there.
So I went there, and this is how I met my mentor. My mentor's name is Robert Baker. He is a wonderful psychic medium. And he was the first person to tell me, you're going to do this, you know, you're going to be a psychic medium. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's like on crack. I will not do this. I have to finish my master's. I want to become a therapist for children. And I had it all mapped out. I mean, I wanted to be a school therapist, and then if I found a husband and had kids, great. I would take the time off and then come back a little bit and then build my own practice for children. And that was going to be my master plan. And little did I know that God said, no, I don't think you're going to go that route.
But you know what? You're busy helping so many people to heal that it's helping their children. So like in that way,
Listen,
you're doing that.
there was a method to God's madness,
Right,
and
right, absolutely. And how did this working relationship you have with therapists evolve? And boy, are you singing my tune when you talk about working with therapy combined with mediumship to help people heal? So you want to, which is something I did. So tell us how this working relationship with therapists evolved and how mediumship combined with therapy can improve a person's ability to
sure,
process,
sure.
and heal.
Well, it started with one therapist, and then the ball started rolling.
So the therapist
because,
got to know you through a reading or something?
well, a patient, I was living in my old neighborhood, and there was a horrific car accident involving some teens, in which two of the teens passed on. Little did I know that one of the surviving teens would be one of my neighbors. And that neighbor, the parent came, one of the parents of one of the kids that passed on came to see me. And they were both seeing the same therapist in Morristown, New Jersey. Her name is Meg Coleman O'Connor, wonderful person. And she calls me out of the blue. She says, I want to talk to you because I'm getting all these clients that have seen you, and that you're providing information that is helping them. And I said, Meg, you know, I would love to, but I'm so busy and whatever. And eventually we did meet. I did read for her. She then approved, and she started to have evenings with her clients in her office. Her office was pretty big, and she'd, you know, offer it to her clientele if they wanted to have a night with a medium. And that's how that was born.
Wow, that's fantastic.
That's how that was born. And then, of course, there's been other, therapists that have found out about me and come to me as clients themselves. And then, you know, we've cross-referred clients to one another. And so that's how that association began. But I believe in the integration of everything. You know why? Because we are mind, we are body, and we are soul. And our soul is an energy system that manages not only the entire function of your body from birth to death, but it is a force that is born of God. We are made in his image, and that image is an energetic image that is able to create everything. So our mindset, our emotional being, our spiritual energy is all intertwined and connected. So we have to treat all sides in a very holistic fashion in order to progress in life. We need to understand ourselves and what motivates us emotionally, what cuts us off emotionally, what hurts us emotionally, what prevents us from growing emotionally. And we can understand it and incorporate what helps us emotionally to evolve through therapy. But on the spiritual end, we need to connect with our creator to facilitate even better insight and gain peace in moving forward when we experience trauma in life, when we experience pain in life, when we experience phobias and all kinds of like things that develop in the psychological realm. And there's also things that are not explained by psychology that can be explained through the spiritual, such as past life trauma and why people have incredible like fears and phobias and things of that nature. And that has been tackled in my, office, with certain patients and certain clientele. So yes,
it's a collective picture. It's a collective.
Yes.
I have to for our audience listening to us, I must say that when I went through my tremendous grief over the car accident and soft transitioning to the other side, I worked with a life transition coach. I worked with mediums, and I worked with a spiritual energy healer. And that's why I am such a proponent of healing, because I don't know where I would have been without all those parts of the puzzle to help.
Yes, I think it's a must. I think it's a must, especially these days. We're growing, we're evolving as a human species, as spirits. And I think that was lacking in the integrative health field. I think that is what's really lacking, that we need to have a more integrative approach to the human condition.
I agree, could not agree more, which the mission of this podcast, right? So
right.
Let's change gears a little bit, because
sure.
You've got some great stories working with the police to help them solve cold cases and murder cases. Do you still do this?
Not as often. I haven't done it in a few years. It was very hard work. It's very taxing. It's
amazing to me that the police open up and let you in to help them.
Yeah, so. I had, of course, it was through people I knew that were my clients. But somehow someone in Miami got a hold of me, and that's how that started. But I had a case that was presented to me, an unsolved case of a man who had been murdered, who was very famous, and I cannot remember his name. I have the article somewhere in my scrapbook, but he was an interior designer in Miami, a very famous one. He had his own interior design company, and he was very famous, very rich, and he lived in an area called Coco Plum. Coco Plum is
I remember hearing this story. Yes.
So he was an interior designer. He lived in a closed community, in a gated community called Coco Plum, which is in one of the inlets near Coral Gables. Okay. So someone had gotten in and murdered him, and his lover was left untouched. He had like wounds, but they weren't like life-threatening wounds or anything like that. So the police contacted me and did not let me know that they had a suspicion as to who it was. And I gave them a physical description of the lover. Told him that the lover had a rap sheet that you couldn't believe. I just saw a rap sheet from here to the eternity. And sure enough, the guy had a rap sheet. He was a male dancer at a gay club, a nightclub. So he was like a male dancer, and he would entrap married men and then blackmail them. And they would pay it, obviously, because they had reputations to save and all that. And so he had passed a couple of bad checks, and he had been jailed or he had served some time for this. And he was married. So this was a way of life for this person. So unbeknownst to the poor designer, he had all this other secret life going on. The designer, I don't know how they met, but I can suspect how they met. But he had been living with the designer for some time, and the designer, I saw, he had been stealing from him. And the designer had a collection. I could see the designer's house. It was beautiful. Now, the closet was probably as big as my kitchen. Okay. And in the middle was this island that had all his jewelry, and he had a collection of watches, and things started to get, you know, go missing, and of his watch collection and stuff. So he pretty much called the lover on the carpet and said, I know that you're stealing from me, and I'm going to call the police. And they had a drag out fight, and that led to his murder. And the way it occurred was exactly how the evidence turned out for the police. So I saw the lover go into the kitchen and get a knife, and he had a glove. So he started stabbing the poor man left and right. And I could see the spirit showing himself in front of me, and I could see the gashes in his shirts. He was wearing an Oxford shirt and khaki pants and loafers. And this is how he dressed every day. He just changed the color of his shirt, but that was his uniform. I come to find later on. So basically, I could see the gashes in his shirt, and then the gashes started bleeding. And then all of a sudden, I start to see indentations in his skull. He was bald. So I see indentations in his skull. And the indentations started to get bruised and then black. And it started to decay in front of my eyes. It was like a horror movie. Well, two instruments were used: the knife, a kitchen knife, and a hammer. When he did not die, and he was stumbling, holding on for dear life to the sides of the walls of his hallway towards his bedroom, where he was trying to seek, safety from his attacker, his lover, all the walls, I could see the walls were just drenched in blood of, from his hands, from trying to block the knife. And then he stumbled, but the guy came after him with a hammer until the head of the hammer broke.
Oh,
that's how hard this guy got hit. And he was murdered in cold blood. It was horrific. They found the knife, they found the hammer, but of course, no prints, right?
Because he had a glove on.
I said, there's a glove. Turn it inside out, and you will find his prints and his DNA in it. They did.
Oh.
He was convicted. He was tried, convicted, and found guilty, and on death row, and he was executed in Florida.
Wow, what a story. Now here's another story for everybody to go, whoa, Silvia, tell us about your 9/11 story.
Oh, wow. So 9/11 happened, and needless to say, I won't go into it, but I had warnings that it was coming. I just didn't know what to make of it, but that's for another time. But I was invited by a group that found out about me through one of their members that came to see me individually. And she had lost a husband. And I don't remember the particulars of that reading, but she was very impressed. And I was invited to my first of a few groups, many groups, that I would then hold these private group meetings with to help with 9/11, free of charge, of course. And I went all the way down to Rumson to a women's group. It was like a women's group in Rumson. The women's, auxiliary group or something like that.
Rumson, New Jersey, everybody.
Rumson, New Jersey, yes. And there were many, many who died that were from Rumson. many people that died that worked at Cantor Fitzgerald and worked at different financial organizations from Rumson. So I was invited there, and there were about 26 people that we were all sitting in one room in a circle. And I didn't know, this was the first time that I had been faced with such a daunting task of reading, because it was not an isolated, and the whole world knew what happened. We here in the East were affected deeply. We saw those towers come down. We saw our own citizens, our own neighbors be affected by it. Someone knew someone that were killed at the towers. Everybody knew somebody that knew somebody. Okay. And it was in our faces, for months. And I was traumatized by it, to be honest with you. So this was the first time I was personally affected by something that had happened. This was not, okay, I'm just discovering that, somebody died of a drug abuse or something like that. It's not somebody known to me. This was an event that was impactful. So I had that to deal with. Then I went person by person by person by person, all in a row, like from left to right. Everybody got a message. Everybody had authenticated. It was on point with everybody, to the point that the last person that I read for, I said to her, she was a widow, and her husband passed away and left behind 2 gorgeous daughters. And he was telling me what he had done with them the night before this reading. And I saw Peter, I saw Tinkerbell flying around. Oh, what is this Tinkerbell? And I saw him sitting on his daughter's bed behind the mother, who was then reading Peter Pan. And I said, are you reading Peter Pan? Because I'm seeing Tinkerbell like flying all over the place. Well, not only Tinkerbell was her daughter's favorite character in the book, but that night before, they were reading, and he was showing me, her husband was showing me that he was part of this, and he was helping her raise their children. And this was the proof to them. Listen, I left that place. I can't even describe to you. I was such in shock, in awe, and in complete grief for these people. It was unbelievable.
But I have my own story about that, because like you say, those of us who live here we're all very affected by this. So
right.
Around that time, it was about 3 or 4 years after the accident, I happened to go to a medium for a change. I wanted to connect with Saul and get that comfort. And the medium said, I'm getting a message from a man, and he describes a pearl necklace, and he describes a trip to Hawaii, and he gives me a name, and it's not Saul. And I realized that the name, and I did not know that this man was in the World Trade Center and had been killed at 9/11. And he gives me the name, and I go, oh my God, this guy skied with Saul and me for 5 years at Hunter Mountain.
Wow.
And this man, and the message that I got described the trip to Hawaii, the gift he gave her, all kinds of things. And I called her, and I said, I know we haven't talked for a while, and Saul is not with me anymore. We had this accident and all that. I said, but I was talking to a medium. She said, please tell me you got a message from my husband. That would mean so much to me. I said, let me tell you what I was given, and it was totally right on. They had taken her to Hawaii just before 9/11. He had given her the strand of pearls that he talked about, the whole thing. And I was so grateful to be able to deliver that message. And I know, and I tell people through mediums, you sometimes get a message for someone else. So a lot of times you go there, you say, I want to hear from this person. But there are other
Right.
people buzzing around who are saying, hey, this person's open. I want to get through for the message for my neighbor or my. It's happened a few times for me where I've been able to help someone with a message that I got through that slipped into my own
Right.
reading, but that was pretty dramatic.
That's
And speaking
incredible.
of that, right? And speaking of these amazing experiences, I know you've also, God revealed something to you during a moment of crisis,
Mm.
right? It has to do
Yeah.
with your dad. You want to
Yeah,
share
my
that with
dad.
everybody?
Well, as with many people, I'm not exempt from having childhood trauma and traumas in my life. My dad, it's difficult for me to talk about this, but my dad was an alcoholic. He was an abusive alcoholic at that. I grew up in an abusive home, unfortunately. And at the age of 7, every night was WWF in my house. My dad would come home drunk. My mom would confront him. We were poor,
What does
trying to
WWF stand for?
Worldwide Federation of Worldwide
Oh,
Wrestling Federation.
okay, got it.
Yeah, it was like the WWF completely, and now with
Wow.
all the whistles and bells. So yes, I mean there was a lot of violence in my home that I was exposed to and experienced firsthand, unfortunately. And about a year, 10 months to a year ago, God spoke to me and said, "Your dad." I just had this. I knew your dad is not long for this world. And my dad and I had been estranged. Uh, he had been estranged from me and my sister for years, more so with my sister than me, because I gave him more chances to be a dad. And it didn't work out. And for my own sanity and for my own mental health and happiness, I had to disconnect. But I had the daunting task of either deciding whether to approach my father, make peace before he passed away or not. And I just didn't know how to broach it. And this is just such a sensitive subject for me, and I know many people.
I'm sure there's so many people relating to you as you're talking about.
Yeah. So I didn't know what to do, because how could I make it right and not tell him why I was doing it. And so I decided to put my faith in God. By this time, I had really forgotten, and forgiven him, not forgotten everything, but forgiven him, because I truly understood he was incapable of being not only a good father, but just a happy man and a happy soul. He was still drinking. He was still struggling in life. And that's just the hallmark of someone that doesn't love themselves. And I really just understood that intrinsically. It didn't make anything right of what happened in my past, but I was able to get past all of
But it's
that.
amazing also because of the spirituality that you now had, and you had also gone to school majoring in psychology and all. So
Right.
this gave you a little bit of a leg up to be able to transcend it and accept it a little bit.
It did. But I think spirituality took me over the finish line, because it gave me peace. And sometimes we can understand the traumas, the whole hook that keeps us in pain sometimes these are our parents, they should know better. And that's what people tell themselves, but they don't know better. And it is up to us to forgive, and it's up to us to do that work to heal. It's up to us individually, not up to them, because we're not in charge of anybody else but ourselves. So that's what I did. So I said to God, God, I think I'm just going to take a pass right now. When it happens, and I'll deal with it at that moment, and you'll enlighten me and everything. Well, September of this past year rolled around, and I get a call around the 15th or 14th of September from my sister. And she tells me our uncle called her and texted her and told her that my dad had been rushed to the hospital, that he had fallen. He had fallen at the house and literally couldn't get up, just like the commercial. And we come to find later on that he'd fallen twice and he could not get himself up. His brother who lived with him could not get himself up. So they called the ambulance. The ambulance then rushed him to the hospital. And at that point, we didn't know, but we came to find a day or two later after he had been, you know, tests were run on him and everything. He had stage 4 lung and liver cancer, was in complete renal failure, and had blood clots all riddled throughout his entire body. He was lucky to be alive. And doctors were amazed that he had not had a stroke. He had not had a heart attack prior to any of this. He was a lifelong drinker and smoker to boot.
Wow.
From the age of 12. So
Wow.
anyway, that was the decision moment. So I had to buckle down. My sister was like, I don't know, maybe you should wait. And I finally decided, I talked to my mother, who's been divorced from my dad for 30 something years now. And I got on a plane. I arrived on a Tuesday. And mind you, I'd been praying for both my parents. I prayed for everybody. But I prayed for my dad. I prayed for my mom. I prayed for everybody, but specifically for my dad to be at peace, to help with his addiction, to whatever. To send him love. That's really all what it is about, Irene. It's just to send him love,
Absolutely.
right? So I get there. I have zero expectations about having any meaningful conversation with my dad. I'm not looking for an apology. I just want to be there for my dad. That's it. And so I was there, and me and my sister both walk into a meeting with the representative from hospice. So you can imagine how that felt. So we ended that meeting, and that night he was moved to hospice. The first day that I ever saw my dad for the first time, he was so weak. And so he was moved in.
You hadn't seen him in like years, 30 years?
No, I hadn't. Well, I hadn't spoken to him in 8, and I hadn't seen him in probably 15, 20 years, maybe. So my sister even more. So anyway, we both are there. We're both taking everything in. We're both trying to resolve. Long and the short of it, this was on a Wednesday. Thursday, I saw him. Then Friday rolls around. My mother is now with me. My sister is not with me that day. And it is around 8, close to 8 o'clock. And we're going to go, the family is going to go to dinner. And I go to say my goodbyes to my dad. Now, I had been helping him get comfortable, giving him sips of water, physically comforting him, rubbing my hand over his head as physically comfort. He couldn't even talk, Irene. He was gurgling at this time. He had that death rattle, It was very, very daunting, very difficult for me to see him like this. This is a previously beautiful, strong, virile man, And I said, Dad, we're going to go to dinner. He was restless. So I said, please get some rest tonight, please. And he looked at me, Irene. He barely could breathe. He could barely talk. And in a very low voice, he said to me, I'm so happy that you came. I'm sorry for everything. It's all been my fault.
Oh my gosh.
He said, I love you, and I will love you always.
Oh my God.
And I could not believe I was hearing those words from my dad. It was incredible. I cannot tell you. It was sad. It was joyful. It was peaceful. I was in shock. I think I still am. But that's what prayer and that's what forgiveness can do. Without even speaking a word in 8 years.
Look at
But that's
what you let go of, that you've been carrying around for all of those years.
Yes, completely. And meditation helped me, you know, I can, you know, I help my clients all the time through meditation, because I think meditation, just like we eat, we breathe, we nourish ourselves, we get up in the morning, we shower, or we go to the gym, or we get ourselves ready for our day. What are we doing for the maintenance and upkeep of our soul? What are we doing? And we barely do anything for it. That's the God's honest truth. A lot of people aren't just ignorant to the fact that the soul is a living, energetic part of you that needs to connect with our creator.
And not only that, a lot of people are walking around, they're not conscious.
They're not.
They're not conscious of the fact that they will return to home.
Right.
They will get a life review.
Right.
Correct. Their behavior, and there's no hell or punishment, but they have lessons to learn, and it's going to follow them to the other side. When you're conscious, that changes the way you interact with people in your life, right? So I want to ask you this, Silvia. Now your father's on the other side.
Right.
As you continue to heal in your life,
right.
Is he around you? Does he continue to heal? Do our loved ones, as we continue to heal, and I've been told this in my own situation with my own father, who's come through to apologize to me and say, I'm healing with you and I've learned so much. But in general, all of us abused, traumatized people on the planet, as we do our healing, do the perpetrators, the ones who hurt us, are they with us and learning as we're learning?
This is how I understand it to be. Now, my dad did come to me. He hasn't come to me often. You know, go figure, but he hasn't. He came to me once, but he smiled at me, and he was young. Like when he looked in his 20s, he was beautiful.
Well, they love to present themselves at their better time.
Yeah,
I know
yes. So he said he was. He didn't say anything. He smiled, and the understanding was that he was going through his life review. Now, this is my understanding. You know, there's family karma. There's personal karma. We all come here to learn. This is a school. This is not like, oh, you get a free pass, $200, pass go, and we're all cool. You know, this is a school, and we sign up to come to this school, like it or not. The lessons that we all learn, we've all signed the contract for these lessons. And we pick our parents. We pick our challenges. And that's a very difficult subject matter to broach with people, because when you tell people, yes, you have to forgive your abusive husband. You have to forgive the rapist. You have to forgive. Yes, you do. You have to, because you picked it. And that is a total, you know, it's a conundrum. Okay. It really is a difficult pill for people.
If you look at this lifetime, you're here to learn lessons. So there are things that you signed up to learn.
So as they learn, and you forgive them. So you release that, and you learn those lessons already. It goes both ways. When they learn and they advance, and they're in this in-between state that Catholics call purgatory, different religions, they have the bardo in Indian and Hindu religion. So it's an in-between place. You cannot get into heaven if you hate yourself. You can't get into heaven if you were an alcoholic and you hated yourself and you didn't work on your stuff. You can't get into heaven if you're angry, if you're bitter, if you're guilty, if you're sorrowful, if you're any of those things. You can't. It's impossible. So there's a program and they all go there. It's like a hospital. It's like a healing place.
It's a healing place, right? I've heard about that.
Yes, it's like a healing place, and they've spoken about it to me, and they do heal. And it goes both ways. And the perfect example, besides myself, but I don't think I'm the most interesting example. There was a woman that came to see me years ago, and her dad came through, and he was in a courtroom being interviewed by other people, and he did not want to talk. He was in plexiglass. He was in heaven or another place. He wasn't here. And he looked at me, Irene, and he said, F you, you bitch. I'm not talking to you. I was flabbergasted. What happened? Well, I come to find that her dad murdered her mother. And everything possible in her life was going wrong. Money-wise, she wanted to start a business. She couldn't start a business. Her marriage was in shambles. And I said to her, I know you're going to hate me for this, but I'm doing this in your best interests. I said, please pray for your father. I said, it has so much bearing on your life and in the trajectory that your life will go. You have to forgive him, and you must pray for him, because it's like praying for yourself. We're all connected, okay? And if you're in a family, you're even more connected, like it or not. Energetically, you're connected, okay? I never saw her. I moved, and about 5 or 6 years later, she shows up again. I had forgotten what, her situation was at that time. I only remembered now because it was the second reading that was really dramatic. Well, wouldn't you know that she had divorced her husband? She was happy. She had a boyfriend. She had a business. And I didn't know this at the time, but I go to communicate, and her dad is there, and her dad is fabulous. And I said, your dad is here, and he's doing great. What did you do? She goes, well, I prayed for him, like you said. And then it all came back. And I go, oh, you're the one. And indeed, she was the one with the father who had murdered. And this is how healing takes place, people. And I don't care. People say, well, my father died, my mother died, it's difficult. They still hear you. They are alive. Just because they're not in a body doesn't mean that they don't exist. And they are alive. Their energy is alive. The bad feelings, the bad thoughts, the anger, the bitterness, the guilt, the BS is a relay system of messages and energy that go back and forth. And they cannot help us if we don't get out of our own prison, because they're out of prison already. They got out. They worked on it, hopefully. And it makes it easier for them to progress. And as they evolve, they help in our personal evolution.
So it goes both ways.
It goes both ways. It does.
It goes both ways. And I know our time is drawing to an end, but I know that you have, so I have like 2 or 3 more questions for you, but I know that you have a great story about a pet, something that just happened with a pet.
Oh, I do pet readings. Okay. So just yesterday, coincidentally or not coincidentally, I had a woman from New York contact me who lost a dog. And let me see if I can, hope she's not going to mind, but she had a beautiful reading with me, and she was flabbergasted that she was, there it is. Hold on one second. I have to get to the notes. Oh, anyway, I can remember. So I said, here it is. I knew her parents were passed away, both of them. And then I said, who is Sophie? And she goes, that's the dog of my best friend that dog just passed away. So that opened up, I described Sophie. And then I said, who's Lucy? Lucy was her dog. And described Lucy as a very particular dog about not wanting to go out for walks in the rain. She goes, oh my God, this dog, she didn't want to go out in the rain, never, nothing worked. The coats didn't work. The umbrellas didn't work. Nothing worked. She refused to go out. I said, you know why? Since this dog was very smart and she put two and two, that rain and thunder happened sometimes at the same time. She hated the sound. She hated the sound and the threat of having to listen to thunder. Well, the dog was so spoiled, talked about how this woman, her owner, would make food for her and what foods she liked. She loved chicken. She said, I like meat, but not all meats. I like my steak.
Oh my
She
goodness.
hated any other meat. She goes, she would only have steak or filet mignon. I said, that damn dog had a better life. Anyhow, she was thrilled. The dog was thrilled. She was so happy. And I said, she died in a freak accident. What's going on? I see like something, like she looped herself around something. And apparently the dog did loop herself around the blinds, the cord of the blinds, and strangled herself by mistake. And she never had done that in her life. And I saw that the dog decided, I've had a good life. The soul, not the personality, not the dog, but the higher soul decided, I'm going to go. I want to take care of my owners from heaven's side and advance in heaven's side. But the dog is making its transition from dog life to a human life.
That's a whole other subject for a whole other interview.
First time that I've ever heard of that, but
wow.
I read about it. And yes, it is possible, because the more that they're treated like family members and the more they act human, the more telepathy they have with us, and they do experience telepathy, and we do have telepathy with them. And then that is the gateway for their own evolution. So we're evolving when we love. When we love, we evolve other beings too.
And I'm not you by any stretch of the imagination, but she'll come back as a very indulged woman with very specific traits.
You'll have carte blanche at Bloomingdale's.
So Sylvia, now everybody's so in love with you, and you're so amazing. Tell us about your readings, your lectures, your workshops, your fundraisers. And you do meditation classes? Do you also do things that help people with meditation?
I am doing, and I'm coming up with a program for next year. Yes, I do, however, have public programs that are sponsored throughout the state. I do a ton of fundraising because I feel it's always important to give back to the community. But I am going to start like my own little tour, shall we say, of, maybe my own events as well. Again, I was doing them a while back.
Are you doing them online, or are you going to do them in different locations?
It's going to be a combination of online, as we are doing here. And those will be more personal classes. Those will be more like teaching sessions, addressing personal issues with people, both intuitively and spiritually, which is one and the same, but helping people grow, helping people evolve, helping people discover their own gifts, if that is where, and I think we all have a gift to offer mankind, but it is to help people evolve and get out of their own way.
That's fantastic. I love that.
And you can find me on my website. I have www.silviarossi.com. Sylvia spelled with an I, not with a Y.
And we will give them all your links and everything. All of that will be with the show too.
Right. So I'm doing that, and tonight or tomorrow night I have an event over in Randolph, New Jersey that is sold out. Thursday, I have another event at the local library, completely sold out. I had one 2 weeks ago, which was at Centenary College locally in Cackettstown, sold out. So, or that wasn't sold out, but that was the biggest event, biggest attendance that I've had for that event in Centenary. And that was the third time I've been invited to come back. And I love it all. I just love it all.
I think you're a blessing. You're gifted a blessing for everybody. Like, come on, Sylvia. So
I think you're a little partial.
A little bit. So I also want to ask you two more questions. First of all, we've been talking about that people can heal on both sides of the veil.
Right.
Why is it especially important for our listeners, for people on this side of the veil, to heal in order to discover and live as an authentic self? And what does that have to do with joy?
Because that's what we come here to do. Number one, that's our main mission, is to heal and to evolve. Evolution is the critical mission of humanity, period. And it starts with you, and it starts with the self. We always have this, well, if that person treats me well, then I'll be happy. I'll be this and I'll be that. Or if, if that person behaves better, I'll be happier. No, the energy emanates from within, and the energy that you have as a soul is an energy system that has the ability to create anything and transform whoever and whatever circumstances are around you. But authentic change has to occur, which means authentic healing has to occur prior to that. So you sign up for those lessons that are the traumas, the hurts, the pains, the divorces, the deaths that we experience in this life, the challenging relationships that we encounter in this life. And it is through those, the web of challenges that we go through and the healing that we can experience that evolves us, because we come to understand ourselves in a different way when we get rid of the muck that we're born into. And I believe that's part of the reason why certain biblical text says we're born into sin, because this place is a challenge. It taints us. It changes us from the pure souls that were born as children to an enlightened being, if possible, but we got to forgive. And, we all religions say to some degree, we have to forgive, we have to love, we have to be at peace to some degree. And that is the mission of the soul. The personality and the ego are at war with your soul. And we have to diminish that, because that is a roadblock to our own progress.
So you're saying the evolved person brings their soul more to the front for that evolution.
The evolved person,
yeah,
the person who wishes to evolve is directed more by the energy, by intuition, by doing what's right from within, not that person or because of that person or because of the other person. You're not a puppet. I see the person that has traumas, being a puppet of those traumas throughout an entire life. To be free of this, you essentially cut all these strings that are attached to you, that are making you angry, that are injuring you, even though people are deceased, relationships are gone from your life. And those instances happened 20 years prior. They still affect you. And you have the task, or you can choose to have the task to get rid of that through forgiveness, through therapy, and through meditation and spiritual understanding that you're not alone. Everybody goes through this.
And when you heal, it has a ripple effect to
it
the people
has
in
a
your
ripple
world.
effect completely.
And if you unload all of that, you can truly experience joy, because you're removing all your blockages to joy.
Yes. A peace and a joy that is unparalleled, because you're not depending on anyone else for that peace and joy. It is emanating from within and from our Creator.
Right. And one other question, and we will be so sad to end this interview. But one other question is, with all your psychic abilities, do you have a wake-up call for all of us in our audience today?
Wow, that's a loaded question, Irene. I do. I think we're in for difficult times ahead for the planet, not just here in the United States. I think the planet is gonna go through very difficult, and we're in them. We're going through these dark times with everything that's going on in the world at this moment. My advice for everybody is go within, continue to heal. It is imperative that we do. It is imperative that we remain peaceful. It is imperative that we do our individual work, because it is individually that we gain ground, and then together we then wake up this planet and we evolve along with this planet. Because as I understand and I feel this in my bones, that this planet is evolving and it is casting off what does not serve it anymore. And we are headed there. And it's going to be a very difficult, as Betty Davis put it, we're in for a bumpy ride. Get ready,
Well, because all the chaos, it's purging all the stuff.
It's purging so much. It's just, but we have the power to heal it and to be aware of how not to repeat it.
Right. If we can learn the lessons, because part of the problems that I think through history we've had is the past keeps repeating itself. The legacy has to stop.
Correct, but we cannot sit here in judgment. We have to pray. Pray for peace, forgive, even if it's in our faces. Hatred is in our face, and it is.
All over.
It is. All over.
All over. So speaking of hatred being all over and becoming at peace and bringing in love, I want to say that, Silvia, you have had a life calling since birth, which is to help individuals and families understand their eternal connection to their loved ones who have passed on. What a gift and a blessing it is to be a conduit between this earthly life and the spiritual world as you are. Thank you from my heart for this fascinating and enlightening and wonderful interview that includes a unique bonus. You just gave us a glimpse into the future. And here is a loving reminder, everyone, that you can see the show notes and all Grief and Rebirth podcast episodes on ireneweinberg.com. And make sure to follow us and like us on social at Irene S. Weinberg on Instagram, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. As I like to say, to be continued. Thank you with so much love, Silvia. Many blessings, and bye for now.
Oh, bye-bye. Love you, Irene. Thank you so much. This was a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right.
Pleasure. Thank you.